Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to introduce our presentation titled, What Differences Do Our Decades of Dedicated Development Work Make for the Real World? My name is Joseph T. Shen, and I am the co-inventor and founder of Premier Heart, LLC. In this session, we'll take a close look at how our innovative MCG technology compares side by side with the traditional 130-year-old EKG. We'll explore the advancements we've made over the years and what they mean for real-world applications. So, let's get started. Let's take a closer look at this comparison chart between MCG and ECG, which really highlights the fundamental differences in how these technologies approach understanding the human body. On the left, we see MCG, or magnetocardiography, described as a 21st century innovation, a systems transformation that pushes beyond traditional boundaries. It's rooted in advanced theories like Lagrangian mechanics and cybernetic control theories, which we are proud to be the first to prove in this context. This means MCG is based on solid, tested scientific principles. In contrast, the ECG, or electrocardiogram, is over a century old, dating back to the 19th century, and is considered somewhat obsolete in today's technological landscape. Its foundational postulates, like the concept of the isoelectric point, remain unproven because that point is actually hypothetical. It doesn't truly exist in the real biological system. When it comes to measuring targets, the differences are striking. MCG measures a complex biological neural network. Think of it as a vast, dynamic power system powered by trillions of mitochondria. Instead of just looking at simple voltage or frequency, it assesses power in watts across multiple domains and phases, incorporating various time frameworks. This approach captures the full complexity of mitochondrial activity and the nervous system's function. Meanwhile, ECG focuses on projecting signals into vectors, millivolts, in a three-dimensional space over milliseconds. It's a more limited, hypothetical view that doesn't fully account for the biological intricacies we're able to explore with MCG. So overall, this comparison underscores how MCG offers a much richer, scientifically grounded picture of human physiology, moving well beyond the traditional, less comprehensive methods of ECG. Let's take a closer look at this comparison chart between MCG and ECG. Starting with peer-reviewed publications, what's important here is our commitment to quality and integrity. We emphasize delivering honest, objective, third-party validated articles. These are conducted without any quid pro quo and rely solely on 100% evidence-based scientific methods. This has led us to achieve validation results that were previously thought impossible. Now, contrast that with the idea of publishing over 1 million repetitive copies of articles simply to build scientific consensus. That's a different approach, more about volume than quality. So it raises a question: is the traditional 130-year-old EKG perfect, or is it just a long, possibly misguided, cross-generational chase? Why isn't anyone questioning that? Moving on to numerical complexity, this is a crucial point. The neural networks we're talking about have discovered parameters in the realm of 10 to the 168th power, or quinquagintillion. To put that into perspective, it's 10 to the 68th greater than a Googleplex. That's an enormous amount of data and complexity, far beyond what traditional systems handle. Finally, systems designs. Our approach is fundamentally different. We rely entirely on empirical evidence and strict mathematical rules for system engineering, especially for supervised machine learning. We incorporate rigorous internal verification and validation processes to ensure that our diagnostic tools are physiologically accurate and reliable. In contrast, the legacy EKG system is essentially based on expert opinion, what I'd call a sham validation process. It's built on unproven assumptions with zero sigma precision. The entire industry, in my view, has relied on a process that's fundamentally unverified and unvalidated. If you want to understand more about that, I'm happy to go into details. Overall, this comparison highlights how our approach is rooted in scientific rigor and advanced technology, while traditional methods rely more on long-standing but unproven practices. Let's take a closer look at this comparison chart between MCG and ECG. First, when it comes to accuracy in diagnosing severe coronary artery ischemia, MCG demonstrates an impressive range of 89 to 100%, proven to be accurate across all stages of cardiovascular disease. This means it's reliable whether the disease is early or advanced. In contrast, traditional ECGs only achieve about 9 to 13% accuracy, and they tend to only detect the disease in its late stages. This is based on our extensive real-world data over decades, which challenges the commonly accepted narratives reported by journals. Moving on to the methods of clinical validation, MCG has been directly compared to gold standards in interventional cardiology, like coronary angiography, fractional flow reserve, and both classical and functional syntax scores. These are the most trusted diagnostic tools in the field. On the other hand, ECG comparisons are generally limited to expert opinions involved in designing the machines themselves, which can create echo chambers and potential biases. Now, regarding value, MCG offers much higher accuracy at a significantly lower cost, with faster turnaround times. This has repeatedly proven its value in markets worldwide. Meanwhile, the ECG has become somewhat obsolete as a diagnostic tool, largely due to past self-congratulatory practices driven by what's called scientific consensus. But as we've learned over the years, the truth is that MCG provides a more reliable and efficient solution, and only we are consistently telling that truth. Let's take a closer look at how MCG compares to traditional ECG in several critical areas. First, when it comes to early detection, MCG has a clear advantage. It can identify microvascular disease, including endothelial dysfunctions, as early as the initial stages, which are often missed by standard tests. In contrast, ECGs are not capable of this early detection. This is a significant point because misdiagnosis in emergency rooms often occurs due to reliance on ECGs, leading to false negatives and, unfortunately, premature deaths within 30 days after an ER visit. Moving on to monitoring and measuring disease progression or reversal, this is another area where MCG shines. It provides continuous, detailed information about physiological and functional changes in the heart. Unfortunately, current cardiology tools, including ECGs and other legacy tests, fall short here. They can't accurately monitor these changes, which can result in delayed diagnoses and ultimately sudden cardiac deaths. Finally, MCG can directly report on a wide range of cardiac conditions, from global or local myocardial ischemia to metabolic dysfunctions, cardiomyopathies, myocarditis, and various forms of myocardial damage, whether chronic, subacute, or acute. It can also detect issues related to rheumatic, pulmonary, or congenital heart diseases. On the other hand, current tools lack this capability entirely. They simply cannot provide the same level of detailed, direct insights into these complex conditions. In summary, MCG offers a comprehensive advantage across early detection, monitoring, and detailed reporting, making it a promising tool to improve patient outcomes and reduce misdiagnoses in cardiology. Let's take a closer look at this comparison chart between MCG and ECG. First, regarding directly reporting myocardial compliance, MCG clearly has the advantage here. It can assess whether the heart muscle is stiff or flexible, which is crucial for understanding various cardiac conditions. When we consider global or local asynchrony, meaning how well different parts of the heart beat in sync, MCG can detect this too. This is important because asynchronous contractions can indicate underlying problems that might not be obvious with other methods. Next, in terms of acute power failure, such as sudden drops in the heart's ability to pump, MCG can identify these events promptly. This leads us to decreased cardiac output, which is essentially the heart not pumping enough blood to meet the body's needs. Moving on, myocardial remodeling. This is the structural change in the heart muscle over time, is also something MCG can monitor effectively. It helps us understand disease progression and response to treatment. Now, regarding the potential for atrial fibrillation or ventricular fibrillation, These are serious arrhythmias. MCG has the potential to identify early signs that could lead to such irregular rhythms. Conversely, ECG, despite its widespread use, cannot reliably predict these arrhythmias, especially in very late-stage heart failure, unless we're doing a resting echocardiogram, which has its limitations and inconsistencies. When it comes to directly measuring and reporting functional physiological heart failure from any cause, MCG can do this as well. This is a key point because it allows for a more comprehensive understanding of the heart's functional status, beyond just electrical activity. Finally, early detection and warning of cardiac decompensation, cardiogenic shock, or heart failure. Here is where MCG truly shines. Independent studies, including those from prestigious Japanese universities, have validated this capability. They've shown consistent, reproducible results, and importantly, they received no compensation for their research, which underscores the objectivity and integrity of their findings. In contrast, ECG simply cannot provide this level of early warning or detailed physiological reporting. This comparison highlights why MCG represents a significant advancement in cardiac diagnostics, aligning perfectly with our goal of improving early detection and intervention in heart disease. Let's take a closer look at this comparison chart between MCG and ECG. One of the key advantages of MCG is its ability to monitor functional improvements resulting from lifestyle changes like intermittent fasting, ketogenic diets, or increased physical activity. This is something that, with ECG, isn't really possible. Similarly, when it comes to assessing how well drugs are working to reverse disease or improve cardiovascular functions, MCG again provides clear insights, whereas ECG falls short in this area. Another important point is about normalization to age and sex or gender. MCG can accurately account for these factors, making its assessments equally reliable for both women and men. On the other hand, there's no research yet on whether ECG can do the same, so its accuracy in this regard remains uncertain. Overall, these differences highlight how MCG offers more comprehensive and tailored monitoring options, which ties back to our theme of advancing cardiovascular diagnostics and personalized care. Let's take a closer look at the comparison chart between MCG and ECG. Starting with ease of operation, MCG is much simpler. It only requires collecting signals from leads V5 and II, which significantly reduces the time and effort needed to place leads on the patient. As one CCU-RN mentioned, having just V5 on the chest and clamp-style leads on the extremities makes a big difference clinically. It saves time, reduces errors, and improves trace quality. Conversely, a 12-lead ECG can be quite challenging. Patients often fidget, cough, or even have electrodes fall off, leading to multiple attempts and frustration, especially when they're in pain. Now, considering overall costs and risks, an MCG test costs between $250 and $750 and takes about 10 minutes. There's no exposure to radiation, no need for IV drugs, and no risk of injury or physical stress. It's a quick, bedside tool that allows physicians and nurse practitioners to make timely decisions and start life-saving treatments without the long wait or high costs. In contrast, diagnosing obstructive coronary artery disease can cost anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000. The process involves radiation, IV drugs, extensive testing, and often weeks of visits to different specialists. Patients face real risks, radiation exposure, potential injuries, even fatal complications. Unfortunately, primary care providers lack an efficient, reliable bedside diagnostic tool to quickly and accurately identify these critical issues. So overall, MCG offers a faster, safer, and more cost-effective alternative that can truly change how we approach cardiac diagnostics at the bedside. Let's take a closer look at this comparison chart between MCG and ECG. As you can see, when patients experience symptoms like chest pain, dizziness, or palpitations, they often ask, "What's causing my chest pain?" Or, "Doctor, how is my heart doing?" Or even, "Help, I'm dizzy and having palpitations." Traditionally, these questions lead to numerous visits and tests, which can be quite burdensome and often inconclusive. But with MCG technology, many of these visits and tests can be safely avoided. This innovative approach allows patients to get a clearer picture of their heart health without the need for multiple specialist visits. Interestingly, Highmark Medicare's medical directors have decided to support and reimburse for MCG at $275 per session, 4 times a year. And there's an important policy note. If a patient undergoes MCG testing for 6 months, Highmark will no longer reimburse any stress testing, including stress EKGs, echocardiograms, nuclear tests, pharmacological stress tests, or CTA scans. This decision caused quite a stir in the cardiology community, as many of these tests are significant income sources for cardiologists. It's a bold move that highlights how MCG could shift the paradigm in cardiac diagnostics. Now, if we look at the conventional pathway, patients often need to see multiple specialists: cardiologists, radiologists, electrophysiologists, and interventional cardiologists. They undergo a series of tests like ECGs, blood work, stress tests, such as stress EKGs, echocardiograms, nuclear imaging, pharmacological stress tests, CTA scans, MRIs, PET scans, and even coronary angiograms. In many cases, despite these efforts, the diagnosis remains unresolved. Patients might need second or third opinions, and still, their condition remains in limbo. This is especially true for women and some men with metabolic heart dysfunction or microvascular disease, who often endure endless testing. Unfortunately, their symptoms are frequently dismissed or their diagnosis remains uncertain. So the key takeaway here is that MCG offers a potentially more efficient and patient-friendly alternative, reducing unnecessary testing and helping to clarify these complex cases. This shift could be a game changer in how we approach heart health and patient care moving forward. Now, let's move on to a side-by-side comparison between our MCG technology and all the other legacy cardiology tests out there. Over the decades, independent verification and validation have shown that MCG can be a game changer. It's not just about confirming what we already know. It's about enhancing bedside diagnosis and decision-making beyond the capabilities of traditional tests. What this means is that our MCG allows everyday clinicians, like you and me, to become super diagnosticians. It empowers us with more detailed, accurate insights, helping us make better decisions for our patients. This slide highlights how MCG stands apart and demonstrates its proven effectiveness, reinforcing the overall theme of innovation and improved patient care through advanced technology. Let's take a closer look at some key concepts related to myocardial ischemia and arrhythmias. First, we have global ischemia, which affects the entire heart, and local ischemia, which impacts specific areas. The severity of the disease can vary widely, influencing how the heart responds and the risk of developing arrhythmias. One important condition to note is atrial fibrillation, a common arrhythmia that originates in the atria, and atrioventricular fibrillation, which involves disorganized activity between the atria and ventricles. These can be seen in conditions like cardiomyopathy or structural heart disease. Now, when we look at the table of conditions, congenital heart disease stands out as a developmental issue present from birth, often predisposing the heart to arrhythmias or remodeling over time. Incipient arrhythmia refers to early, developing irregularities, while potential fibrillation indicates a higher risk of progression to full-blown fibrillation. Myocardial damage, such as myocarditis, can also lead to electrical instability, increasing arrhythmia risk. Pulmonary heart disease and rheumatic heart disease are other systemic conditions that can strain the heart, sometimes resulting in ventricular arrhythmias. These include incipient ventricular fibrillation or hypertrophy, which is the thickening of the ventricular walls. Acute power failure represents sudden loss of cardiac output, often linked to conditions like bradycardia, tachycardia, or decreased ejection fraction, which all compromise cardiac efficiency. Decreased myocardial compliance signifies stiffening, making it harder for the heart to fill, whereas increased compliance can sometimes be a compensatory response. We also see patterns of asynchrony, either global or localized, such as V5 less than II or vice versa. These hints of dysynchrony can be critical in understanding how the heart contracts and how remodeling occurs over time. Finally, myocardial remodeling is a key process that underpins many of these changes. In our MCG report, you'll find the 18 red indications, which are the latest discoveries in myocardial electrical activity and are crucial for identifying subtle but significant alterations in heart function. Connecting all these points, it's clear that understanding the severity and nature of these ischemic and arrhythmic conditions helps us better predict outcomes and tailor treatment strategies. So, what is the real difference that MCG makes in diagnostic medicine for the 21st century? Well, let's start by looking at traditional methods. We have blood tests, X-rays, MRIs, CT scans, and PET scans. These are the tools we've relied on for a long time. But the key issue with all these traditional methods is that they leave us with information blind spots. They give us valuable data, but they don't tell the whole story. Now here, where MCG really changes the game. It fills in those gaps and eliminates the blind spots, providing us with the critical missing vital information we need to make accurate diagnoses. What makes MCG so powerful is that it examines micro and macro molecules within bodily fluids. These are the essential clues that reveal the functional health of systems in the body. Traditional imaging, like X-rays or MRI, shows us the anatomy, what's structurally there, but it only offers partial functional information. It's like seeing the building's blueprint, but not knowing if the electrical or plumbing systems are working properly. MCG, however, gives us that missing piece, insight into how these systems are functioning physiologically. And that's been a huge gap in diagnostic medicine for a long time, the lack of detailed, functional systems information. MCG bridges that gap. It's a breakthrough because it provides a comprehensive view of the body's physiology, which is essential for early detection, prevention, and truly personalized care. This is the kind of innovation that's transforming how we diagnose and treat diseases in the modern era. Let's take a closer look at this comparison between the Premier Heart's multifunction cardiogram, or MCG, and the rest of the traditional heart tests from the 20th century. Starting with the modalities, the MCG uses multiple functions to measure the cardiovascular system's overall physiological functions in the frequency domain. It employs power spectra and various transformations to analyze these functions comprehensively. In contrast, most legacy tests rely on a single measurement or a limited set of parameters, which often provide just a snapshot rather than a full picture. When it comes to the range of parameters, the MCG covers an almost unimaginably broad spectrum, which I like to think of as quinquequagintillion, meaning trillions of parameters, giving it a nearly limitless amount of data on heart function. On the other hand, traditional tests include biomarkers and standard procedures like EKGs, stress tests, and even coronary angiograms, which are valuable but much narrower in scope. Now, on whether these tests are qualified for screening, meaning early detection, the MCG scores a perfect 100%. It can detect and monitor a wide range of conditions early on, including myocardial ischemia, arrhythmias, and various other pathological states. Some of these issues are even undetectable with conventional EKGs. Conversely, traditional tests have limited screening capabilities, often measuring just a handful of parameters and focusing on later stages of disease. And finally, the accuracy. The MCG offers between 90 and 100% accuracy for identifying obstructive coronary artery disease, ischemia, and other root causes of various pathological conditions. This high level of precision is crucial for early intervention. Traditional tests, however, don't provide this level of accuracy. They focus on detecting disease late in its progression and lack the ability for early detection, treatment monitoring, or severity assessment. As a result, clinicians are essentially flying blind when relying solely on these legacy tests. So, in summary, the MCG offers a revolutionary approach, comprehensive, early, and highly accurate, compared to the limited and often late-stage focus of old-school heart testing methods. This is a significant step forward in how we can better detect and manage cardiovascular health. Let's take a closer look at the comparison between MCG and the rest of the approaches. First, regarding diagnosis, traditional systems often face significant supply and demand imbalances. These rely on severity scoring from 0 to 22 and categorize findings across 8 different areas, but they often depend on identifying root causes that can be either known or unknown. For example, microvascular disease, myocarditis, inflammation, cardiomyopathy, or structural abnormalities. These conventional methods typically require about 10 minutes at the bedside, but they often lead to delays and high costs. Diagnostic tests like EKGs have a yield of only about 0 to 13%. Stress imaging tests range from 9 to 38%, and coronary angiograms can have false positive rates anywhere from 62 to 100%. This means millions of patients undergo unnecessary invasive procedures, which can be potentially deadly. Moving to outcomes, early detection is crucial. It allows us to focus on primary lifestyle interventions to prevent or reverse chronic diseases early on. Whether it's hypertension, coronary artery disease, strokes, neurodegenerative diseases, chronic kidney failure, diabetes, or even cancer, early detection can help prolong a healthier lifespan. Ultimately, the goal is improving long-term outcomes in real life. However, there's a misconception that obstructive coronary disease is the main issue. The truth is, this is often a red herring used to lure patients into invasive procedures like angiograms, PTCA, stenting, or bypass surgeries. In terms of disease stage detection, our approach covers all stages, from the earliest functional changes to the most advanced. We use severity scoring and the 8-category treatment progress monitoring to track disease evolution and even reversal. Interestingly, there's no significant difference in long-term outcomes between medical and surgical treatments, with major adverse cardiac event rates around 13 to 15%, including sudden death. Finally, let's talk about costs. The bedside test I mentioned costs between $250 and $500 and takes just about 10 minutes. It's simple, accessible, and affordable. In contrast, traditional testing often involves multiple visits, a process that can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. This approach is not only costly, but also inaccessible to many, especially those with fewer resources, and it carries a high risk of misdiagnosis. So, to sum up, our approach emphasizes early, comprehensive, and cost-effective detection, which can significantly improve patient outcomes and reduce unnecessary procedures and expenses. Let's take a closer look at how MCG compares to other testing methods. On the left, we see that bedside tests typically take around 10 minutes, which makes them quick and convenient for immediate decision-making. In contrast, traditional testing often involves telescoping of tests, meaning multiple visits to different clinics or labs. This process can be inaccessible to many, especially those who are poor, because it requires time, transportation, and resources. Another critical point is the accuracy. Bedside tests generally offer better accuracy, leading to fewer misdiagnoses, whereas the traditional approach tends to have higher rates of errors. Looking ahead to the future, our contribution is just beginning. We're exploring ideas like distributed, individually owned data networks to ensure research is conducted ethically and transparently. This will support rigorous verification and validation of new drugs and treatments. Additionally, we're developing automated decision-making tools for diagnostics and monitoring, which aim to make bedside care faster and more efficient. While traditional methods may take weeks or even months, involving multiple visits and tests, our goal is to streamline this process, making healthcare more accessible, accurate, and timely for everyone. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. That's a powerful reminder that what we often see as impossible is really just a perspective. It's not an absolute truth, but how we interpret the situation. Arthur Schopenhauer highlights that all truth tends to go through 3 stages. First, it's underestimated. People don't believe it's possible or dismiss it outright. Then it faces vehement opposition, where critics and skeptics push back strongly, doubting or resisting the idea. Finally, after enough time and evidence, it becomes accepted without needing further explanation. It's seen as a natural truth. This progression shows us that groundbreaking ideas or innovations often follow this pattern before they become mainstream. And connecting this to our overall theme, it reminds us that pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo can be met with resistance, but persistence can lead to acceptance. So, when you face doubt or opposition, remember that it's part of the process of turning the impossible into the accepted reality. And this is just the beginning. What we're seeing today is only the start of what's possible. If you don't look to the east, you won't see the sunrise. That new day, new opportunities, and fresh innovations are on the horizon. A bright future for all of us is ahead, full of potential and progress. The experts once insisted that what we have successfully developed was impossible, something that couldn't be achieved until at least 2050. But we've proven them wrong. We've pushed the boundaries, shattered the limits, and shown that what was once considered impossible is now within our reach. This isn't just about technology or progress. It's about redefining what's achievable and inspiring everyone to believe in a better, more sustainable future. And this is just the beginning of that journey. Thank you. I truly appreciate your attention. We aim to balance creativity and innovation with our highest priorities, namely, ensuring our system's effectiveness and patient safety. It's essential that as we introduce new technologies, we do so responsibly and thoughtfully. Our MCG represents a major leap forward. Think of it as your 21st century replacement for the traditional 130-year-old EKG. It's also replacing many of the legacy stress imaging tests that cardiologists have relied on for years. This slide highlights our commitment to advancing cardiac care while maintaining the highest standards. We're blending innovation with safety, ensuring that the future of heart health is not only smarter, but also more reliable. In essence, we're modernizing cardiovascular diagnostics in a way that supports better patient outcomes and aligns with the evolving landscape of medical technology. Thank you again for your attention and trust.